What's up guys, and welcome to my PHP backend. So this is also like an intermediate video before we continue with part 28, and I'm gonna go through the definition for abstract classes when you use private, protected, and public, and also if you don't assign this kind of function, what it'll do for you basically. And let's start by looking into the implementation of stuff right here. So in here, you can see I made an abstract class called middleware that extends the controller class. And in here, you can also see that it's an empty body. And the name validation class, which you're going to see in the next tutorial, and also the middleware class. This class right here extends that middleware class that we looked at previously. So what is the definition for an abstract class, and why did I use an abstract class right here, and why didn't I use an interface, and what's the difference between an interface and an abstract class? Well, the way I've learned it is like the definition for an abstract class is, let's terminate that up. And the definition for an abstract class is that it cannot be instantiated. So you cannot create an instance of the middleware class in this particular example. So you can only create instances that extends this class, the middleware class. So you can create an instance of the name validation, but not the middleware class. So that's one of the definitions. And also this is only part of the solution, so you cannot be instantiated. And also, you gotta include at least one abstract function. So at least one abstract function. And as you can see, this one does not. So it's not a proper motivation for keeping an abstract class. At this actual implementation in this particular state of the system, this is not at all motivated for being an abstract class. And so that's also one motivation for keeping an abstract class. So it cannot be instantiated. You gotta have at least one abstract function. It's gotta be extended by someone. So you gotta be extended by someone, all right? And it is. And so why did I make it an abstract class? Because I know, for example, that in the future I'm gonna have more and more middleware in here. So we're gonna have a lot of classes, and eventually I know from experience that we're gonna have some abstract classes in here and some shared functionality for all the middleware. So that's why I made an abstract class. But on the other hand, I don't want anyone to instantiate actual middleware class, because that's not how it works. I want to have it isolated and not being able to instantiate the middleware class. So that's why I kept it abstract. And that's the definition for an abstract class, according to my opinion, at least. So the definition for private, protected, and public, this shouldn't come as news to you if you're familiar with object-oriented programming. So the difference between private, protected, and public variables or functions is that, for example, all these, the public ones, they can be called from outside of the class. So whenever I create an instance of the caller controller, in this instance, you can call the get all callers, and you can call the get all caller by ID function, whatever. So that's the public ones. And let's see if I can find anywhere else where I keep. All right, so here I have one of the private ones. So I have a variable called private connection. And this variable can only be used within the actual within the actual implementation, so it cannot be used. It cannot be accessed from outside the SQL repository in this case. And then we also have the protected, which means that it's like in between public and private. So private you can only use within the class. Public you can use access from outside the class. And protected you can only use like within the class and also from subclasses. So for example, if you have a base class and you define something protected, for example, if I define some variable in the let's say in the middleware class right here, if I define that's protected, I don't know, name something, let's see, $name, like this, I will be able to access this within the middleware class, but I would also be able to access it within the name validation since it extends the middleware, but I will not be able to access it without that bounds basically. So I would not be able to create an instance of a name validation and then access this variable right here. So it's made for variables that's supposed to be inherited basically. So in Java, if you're familiar with that, if you don't, you can skip to the next video. But if you're familiar with Java, you also might be familiar by not defining the access modifier, the public, private, protected, that is. And if you don't provide it at all, it's gonna be somewhere in between. I have no idea actually, like somewhere in between protected and private, I think. You can use it in your unit tests, and you can use it in the package, I think. But I'm not really the right person to ask this kind of questions, but it's an edge case basically, and if you're used to Java, it's not applicable in this tutorial basically. That's my point basically. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. It's quite short, and I hope to see you in the next one. So I hope you enjoy it. Bye bye.